back to Rocky Mountain Prepper. I am Bellum. This time we are continuing with the Strong Foundation series, in which we are reading through the Bible. We are still in Genesis for a little bit longer. We are on Genesis 46. When last we were together, we read how Joseph became not only second to Pharaoh and stored up all the food for the Egyptians and ended up the rest of the world, but Joseph's family came down to get food. Joseph was helping them out and finally revealed himself to them as his brother and sent them to get his father. Before he sent them, he talked to Pharaoh, and Pharaoh said, "Yes, go, please, take him. Bring your family, all of your family down, everything they have. They don't have to worry about their stuff, because they will have the best of all of Egypt." Well, he also sent, Pharaoh also sent a lot of wagons to help bring the family down and all of their stuff. They got there and told Jacob, who was also known as Israel, that Joseph is alive, and he is in fact the person that they had been dealing with. And he told him some stuff so that the father knew that they were being honest. So he decided that they should go, and he was really happy. All right, we're picking up in Genesis 46, so please open your Bibles and follow along. As usual, please don't rely on just me to read. Please open your Bible, follow along, read it yourself, and discover for yourself what is in God's Word. It is much better to read it yourself than to farm it out to other people. It sticks in your brain better. You read the words, it helps you. Because there may come a time that you will need to remember these stories, because you won't have access to a Bible for whatever reason. And this book brings hope. Without hope, in any situation, you won't last 30 seconds. Hope keeps us going. And by putting all of this in here, God has given us access to hope. In the last one, I did mention that the Pharaoh Joseph dealt with that had the dreams was Amenhotep III. That's just my research. You may do research on your own. And if you figure out that it was a different Pharaoh, please let me know. Leave a message in the comments. I'd be happy to discuss it. I've gone through research, and he is the best candidate in my book. During the time, they built a great reservoir connected by a huge canal, which drains roughly half of the normal floodwaters to stabilize the floods. And Amenhotep III actually put his pyramid over there next to that canal. Okay. Anyway, I was just looking over at some of my notes for when we get into Exodus. But yeah, so Israel says basically, enough. My son Joseph is still alive. Let me go and see him before I die. That was the last that we read in 45. So Genesis 46. In Hebrew, that would be Bereshit 46. 46. And Israel set out with all that he had, and came to Beersheba, and slaughtered slaughterings to the Elohim of his father Isaac. And Elohim spoke to Israel in the visions of the night, and said, Jacob, Jacob. And he said, Here I am. And he said, I am the Elohim of your father. Do not be afraid to go down to Mitzrayim, for I shall make you there into a great nation. I myself am going down with you to Mitzrayim, and I myself shall certainly bring you up again. And let Joseph put his hands on your eyes. Basically what he was saying with that, what God was saying with that is, don't be afraid to go down. I'm going with you. And I have set this up so that you will be cared for, and when you die, Joseph will be there to close your eyes in death. He will be there to help prepare your body for burial. And Jacob rose up from Beersheba, and the sons of Israel brought their father Jacob and their little ones and their wives in the wagons which Pharaoh had sent to transport him. And they took their livestock and their property which they had acquired in the land of Canaan, and came into Mitzrayim, Jacob and all of his seed with him, his sons and his sons' sons, his daughters and his sons' daughters, and all his seed he brought with him to Mitzrayim. And these were the names of the children of Israel, Jacob and his sons who came into Mitzrayim. Reuben was Jacob's firstborn. And the sons of Reuben, Hanok and Palu, and Hezon and Kermi. The sons of Simeon, Jemuel and Jamin and Oad, maybe, and Jachin and Zoar, and Shaul, son of a Canaanite woman. And the sons of Levi, Gershon, Kath, and Mira. The sons of Judah were and Odan, Shelah, and Peretz, and Zerah. But and Onan died in the land of Canaan. And the sons of Peretz were Hezron and Hemuel. And the sons of Ishkar, Toral and Pawa, and Job and Shuron. And the sons of Zebulun, Shared and Elon and Jalel. These were the sons of Leah, whom she bore to Jacob in Paddan-aram with his daughter Dinah. All the beings, his sons and his daughters, were 33. That's just 33 that came from Leah. And the sons of Gad, Xiphon and Hagi, Shuri and Esben, Ezri and Aradai and Ariel. The sons of Ashar, Jemiah and Ishwa and Iji and Berah and Sarah, their sister. And the sons of Bilhah, Heber and Milki. These were the sons of Zebulun, whom Laban gave to Leah his daughter, and she bore to Jacob 16 beings. The sons of Rachel, Jacob's wife, Joseph and Benjamin. And Joseph in the land of Mitzrayim were born Manasseh and Ephraim, whom Asenath, the daughter of Potipharah, the priest of On, bore him. And the sons of Benjamin, Bilhah and Baker and Ashbel and Gera and Naaman, Eri and Rosh, Muppin and Huppin, and Ard. I would hate to have any of those names, but Ard would be, especially, kids can be so cruel these days. These were the sons of Rachel, who bore to Jacob 14 beings in all. The sons of Dan, the son of Dan, was Heshem. The sons of Naphtali, Jezreel and Guni and Jezer and Shillem. These were the sons of Bilhah, who Laban gave to Rachel his daughter, and she bore these to Jacob, 7 beings in all. All the beings who went with Jacob to Mitzrayim, who came from his body, besides Jacob's sons' wives, were 66 beings in all. And the sons of Joseph, who were born to him in Mitzrayim, were 2 beings. All the beings of the house of Jacob who went to Mitzrayim were 70. That's a big family. That would be hard to remember everybody at a family reunion. And he went, and he sent Judah before him to Joseph to point out before him the way to Goshen. And they came to the land of Goshen. And Joseph made ready his chariot and went up to Goshen to meet his father Israel. And he appeared to him and fell on his neck and wept on his neck a long time. They'd been parted for so long. I mean, I would have cried. I mean, if my dad walked through the door, he's been gone since I was 2. I'd bawl like a little baby on him. I'm pretty sure he'd do the same on me. And Israel said to Joseph, "Now let me die, since I have seen your face that you are still alive." And Joseph said to his brothers and to his father's household, "I am going up to inform Pharaoh and to say to him, my brothers and those of my father's house who were in the land of Canaan have come to me. And the men are shepherds, that they have been men of livestock, and they have brought their flocks and their herds, and all that they have. And it shall be, when Pharaoh calls you and says, what is your occupation, that you shall say, your servants have been men of livestock from our youth, even until now, both we and also our fathers, so that you dwell in the land of Goshen, for every shepherd is an abomination to the Mitzrayites. He's trying to coach them on the proper way to talk to Pharaoh, because he got used to it. He knows how Pharaoh expects people to speak to him. They're shepherds. They're men of the fields. They would be gruff. They don't know how to speak to royalty. So he's coaching them a little bit. Gotta have water. Water is life. All right. Genesis 47. And Joseph went and spoke to Pharaoh, and said, my father and my brothers, their flocks and their herds, and all that they possess have come from the land of Canaan, and see, they are in the land of Goshen. And he took 5 men from among his brothers, and presented them to Pharaoh. And Pharaoh said to his brothers, what is your occupation? And they said to Pharaoh, your servants are shepherds, both we and also our fathers. And they said to Pharaoh, we have come to dwell in the land, because there is no pasture for your servants' flocks, for the scarcity of food is severe in the land of Canaan. And now, please, let your servants sojourn in the land of Goshen. And Pharaoh spoke to Joseph, saying, your father and your brothers have come to you. The land of Mitzrayim is before you. Settle your father and your brothers in the best of the land. Let them dwell in the land of Goshen, and if you know of capable men among them, make them chief herdsmen over my livestock. Basically, that little passage there, Pharaoh is recognizing Joseph's upbringing and all that Joseph did for Pharaoh and for Egypt. The way it reads to me is that Pharaoh is so incredibly happy that he finally has a way of thanking Joseph for saving all of them. Because without Joseph, they wouldn't have been ready for the famine. Joseph was directly responsible for them storing up food, which is keeping them alive. And Pharaoh seems like he was desperate to show his gratitude for all that Joseph had done for him. And this gives Pharaoh a chance. He's putting them on the best pasture lands. The land of Goshen, if you look at the maps, it's right up there in the Nile Delta. It's on the eastern side of the Nile Delta. Certainly Pharaoh would have heard stories of Abraham. Word travels somewhat quickly in that area. Abraham, with just over 300 men, took out an army of thousands, tens of thousands, including the Rephaim, the giants. Pharaoh would have recognized that, and he would have thought of it as an opportunity that if he kept them happy, they would actually protect the northern border. They would protect that little border between Egypt and the Sinai Peninsula. And these people are obviously capable fighters, but they are also very wise, and obviously their God is blessing them. So He's wanting them to take care of Pharaoh's herds. I mean, why not? They're obviously really good with everything that they touch. So Pharaoh is giving them an opportunity that could also benefit him. And it makes sense. From a military standpoint, okay, these guys have been learning from very young how to defend their flocks. Their grandfather was an incredible warrior. Their grandfather would have taught their father. Would have taught their father. And their father would have taught them. They wouldn't have been pansies. I mean, people think of the shepherds from the Christmas cards, cowering before the angels. Well, honestly, if you see an angel, you'd be terrified too. Especially if you read the book. If you read the scriptures, more often than not, God sends an angel to wipe out a people. Yes, he does send them as messengers, but anytime he has to punish a city, destroy an army, anytime God has to kill a large amount of people, he sends an angel, one angel usually. Sodom and Gomorrah, he sent 2. He didn't have to send 2. 1 would have been more than enough. 1 is overkill. Honestly, 1 angel is like dropping a tactical nuclear weapon to kill a single spider in your house. Angels are terrifying. Don't think of the shepherds as pansies. The shepherds are more like David, who was not even afraid to go up against Goliath, who was such a skilled fighter that King Solomon ended up making him his shield bearer. You know how good you have to be for a king to make you the shield bearer? You're not a lightweight fighter. You are capable. You know how to fight. Later on in the book of Kings, it talks about David and his mighty men. He had a small platoon, barely an 8-man A-team. And they were so good, they would have made our special forces cringe. I mean, honestly, they were psychotically good at what they did. Shepherds are not something to be trifled with. Especially back then. They had to be able to fight off bears, lions. And the lions in Canaan at the time, the reason there aren't any lions in Israel today is because the Romans captured them all because they were 2 to 4 times the size of African lions. They put them in the arenas. They captured them. And they had the gladiators trying to kill them. More often than not, they failed. The lions won. Those lions were nothing to mess with. And then bears. Are you going to go up against a bear with a shepherd's crook? Or a sling? No, you're not. Not nowadays. Even a small brown bear, you're going to say, okay, fine. You want that sheep? I'm going to go get my rifle and take you out. No, these guys fought them. They fought them much like Davy Crockett would have fought them. Yeah, the stories of Davy Crockett trying to smile down a grizzly. When that wouldn't work, he'd pull his knife and kill it. I don't know if those are entirely true or if those are made up, but that is the kind of attitude and skill level that these shepherds had, that the family of Joseph had. They were not pansies. You put them on the northeast border, you keep them happy. An enemy comes down from the north through the Sinai Peninsula, they're dead. Because this group of 70 men are going to fight tooth and nail to keep what they have because Pharaoh was nice to them. Pharaoh was being very smart here. Joseph brought in his father Jacob and set him before Pharaoh. And Jacob blessed Pharaoh. That goes back to the same things that we saw with Abraham. The weaker tithes to the greater, and the greater blesses the lesser. Jacob knows that he is great because of God. So he blesses Pharaoh, who at the moment isn't that great because of the famine. His people are struggling to stay alive. And it gets more into that later in this chapter. But the greater blesses the lesser, and the lesser tithes to the greater. Pharaoh tithed to Jacob by giving him his people, by giving the people of Israel a place to stay. And Israel blesses Pharaoh. Pharaoh allows the blessing because he sees how wise his advisor is, that Joseph is. He recognizes that these guys mean business. They could have let us get wiped out and then come in and taken all of Egypt, but they didn't. They saved us. So Pharaoh is recognizing, by allowing this blessing, he is recognizing the power that Israel actually has. Because Israel is backed by God. And Amenhotep is recognizing that. In fact, he was one of the only pharaohs to become monotheistic. And that would be because of Joseph. Joseph kept saying to him, God gives me the answer. It's not of my own. Joseph kept giving the glory to God, and that brought Pharaoh to God. At least for a time. Joseph brought his father Jacob before Pharaoh. Jacob blessed Pharaoh. And Pharaoh said to Jacob, "How old are you?" And Jacob said to Pharaoh, "The days of the years of my sojourning are 130 years. Few and evil have been the days of my years of my life, and they have not reached the days of the years of the life of my fathers in the days of their sojourning." Basically, that's saying, Pharaoh's like, so how old are you? Because he's an old man. How old are you, buddy? And Jacob is like, dude, I'm 130 years old, but you think that's old? You should have seen my dad, or my grandfather, or my great-grandfather, or my great-great-grandfather. I'm a youngster compared to them. And Jacob blessed Pharaoh and went out from before Pharaoh. Basically, Pharaoh was too shocked to continue the conversation, so Jacob blessed him again, and Pharaoh gave him leave to go. Honestly, I think that's just awesome. Oh, I'm only 130 years, but my days have been few and evil compared to my father. Basically, he's saying my father was more blessed than I. But he's this really old guy. I mean, if you knew the patriarchs and as old as they'd gotten, at your age, would you still feel old? Standing beside Jacob talking about how his body's feeling, would your body still ache? Let's continue. So Joseph settled his father and his brothers and gave them possession in the land of Mitzrayim, in the best of the land, in the land of Ramesses, as Pharaoh had commanded. I think at the time, Ramesses was that little section of the Nile, of the Nile Delta. Uh, there is evidence that Ramesses the Great moved his capital over to what became the city of Ramesses. It mentions that later in the Bible that they built the city of Ramesses, but the old city, the first city there was Avaris. I think that was just, the translation was changed just so people knew where it was. And Avaris was who was that? When the Hyksos came in and conquered Egypt in about 400 or so years after this story, that area was abandoned for like 30, 40 years, and then it became a series of tombs for the Hyksos rulers. And then when Ramesses came in, he changed the name and built his capital city there, over the tombs and over Avaris. Now, at the layer that is Avaris, where they settled, there is a complex, burial complex, with 11 Canaanite-style burials and one small-ish pyramid. If you go to Egypt when they're digging, when they're doing the archaeological times between the planting and after the harvest, before the spring planting, they may allow you to go to Avaris. You just don't mention that you're looking for the city that the people of Israel lived. You actually call it Avaris, and they'll escort you around and show you around. They'll show you this pyramid, and there's a statue at the entrance of it. The statue, they had found evidence on the statue, on the head of the statue, which was broken. It looked like it was an intentional break. The hair was a bright red, and it had, on the statue, the clothes were painted to look like multicolors. It doesn't say in this, it says a fine coat, long coat, but some of the translations actually say a coat of many colors. Joseph's coat was multicolored. It had many colors. It was a very fine long coat. It was not a practical coat for a shepherd, was the point of it. So we know where Joseph was originally buried. Now, the Egyptians tried to destroy the tomb. They broke his statue. But the evidence shows that the sarcophagus was actually removed. And not out of anger, but more or less out of a reverent move. It was carefully removed from there. And before the end of this, you'll see that Joseph actually asks his brothers, make sure that I'm brought to Canaan when I die, or when you guys leave. When you leave, take me with you. Take my body with you. His brothers were buried there and stayed there. Alright, so 47:12. And Joseph provided his father and his brothers and all his father's household with bread for the mouth of the little ones. Basically, he is following the fourth commandment, to honor your father and your mother. He's taking care of his whole family, making sure they have enough food. Egypt is not going to deny him the food. I mean, everyone already believes that it belongs to Joseph anyway. Even Pharaoh recognizes that without Joseph, nobody would be alive at that point. Now, there was no bread in the land, because the scarcity of food was very severe, and the land of Mitzrayim and all the land of Canaan became exhausted from the scarcity of food. That's saying Canaan up to the north, and Egypt, and the known world to them, everyone was starving to death. And everyone was going down to Egypt to get food. Joseph prepared well. I mean, 1/10 of all that was produced in a bumper year. In 7 years that were higher than average floods. Just enough to increase production dramatically. They could have had 20 to 50% more crops. And he's only taking 10% of that and putting it away for later. I know for a fact grain can last a very long time if it's properly stored. Even in crude silos, it'll last 25 years. It can, in a Mylar bag with oxygen absorbers, it can last 50 easily. Grain is a great store to have. And Joseph gathered up all the silver that was found in the land of Mitzrayim and in the land of Canaan for the grain which they bought. And Joseph brought the silver into Pharaoh's house. Pharaoh became exceedingly rich from this. You can tell from his, from Amenhotep's giant pyramid, and how they had, it showed that he was an incredibly wealthy pharaoh. He was one of the richest pharaohs of his dynasty. And it wasn't until the end of that dynasty that they had squandered the wealth. They lost it all. We'll get to how that happened. But the pharaoh became exceedingly wealthy. The first time and the last time that a pharaoh of Egypt became rich from trade. Up until this point and after this point, they only got wealthy through conquering and raiding. But Joseph brought the silver into Pharaoh's house. He made his boss rich. And when the silver was all spent in the land of Mitzrayim and in the land of Canaan, all the Mitzrayites came to Joseph and said, "Give us bread, for why should we die in your presence? For the silver is gone." And Joseph said, "Give your livestock, and I will give you bread for your livestock, if your silver's gone." So they brought their livestock to Joseph, and Joseph gave them bread in exchange for the horses and for the flocks they owned, and for the herds that they owned, and for the donkeys. Thus he fed them with bread in exchange for all their livestock that year. And when that year had ended, they came to him the next year and said to him, "We do not hide from my master that our silver is all spent, and my master also has the livestock we owned. There has not been left any before my master, but our bodies and our lands. Why should we die before your eyes, both we and our land? Buy us and our land for bread, and let our land be servants of Pharaoh, and give us seed, and let us live and not die, and let the land not lie waste." And Joseph bought the entire land of Mitzrayim for Pharaoh, because every man of Mitzrayim sold his field, because the scarcity of food was severe upon them, and the land came to be Pharaoh's. As for the people, he moved them into the cities from one end of the borders of Mitzrayim to the other. Only the ground of the priests he did not buy. The priests had from what Pharaoh gave them by law, and they ate that which Pharaoh gave them by law. Therefore they did not sell their ground. And Joseph said to the people, Look, I have bought you and your land today for Pharaoh. Look, there is seed for you, and you shall sow the land. And it shall be that in the harvest you shall give 1/5 to Pharaoh, and 4/5 is your own as seed for the field and for your food, for those of your household, and as food for your little ones. And they said, You have saved up our lives. Let us find favor in the eyes of my master, and we shall become Pharaoh's servants. And Joseph made it a law over the land of Mitzrayim to this day, that Pharaoh should have 1/5 except for the ground of the priests only, which did not become Pharaoh's. Now, there's actually evidence of this. When Alexander the Great came in and conquered Egypt, he took over the royalty and then said, okay, we have to get ready to fight the people. And the remaining royalty, the people who knew about the royalty, was like, why? So we can possess the land. You already own it. Alexander the Great didn't know, because it's Greek tradition, you own your own land. After this, the pharaohs owned the land, and the people paid rent in food. So Joseph actually made it a little bit confusing for the Greeks when they came through. But there's also some archaeological evidence of this. There's a big old carved letter that's supposedly a copy of a letter that was in papyrus that got sent to the Pharaoh from one of the priests. I can't remember which god they were priests of, but they were talking about how they were guaranteed the land, and they wanted the land back. They talked about how Imhotep had told them that they would always own that land. It would not be taken from them, that he granted it to them. That's why I think Joseph was Imhotep, because there is archaeological evidence that Imhotep was an insanely wise man that actually helped them. Now, that could have just been a title for that particular vizier at the time, but it actually bears out the story of Joseph. At least he became the Grand Vizier and started stocking up food, and there was a famine, and he fed the people. And it was so bad that they had to sell everything they had, including their lands. But these priests were guaranteed their land, and they wanted it back for whatever reason. It says it in there why they lost their land, but they were trying to get it back. But there is archaeological evidence that supports the Bible, if you accept that they could have called Joseph Imhotep. In fact, that could be Joseph in Egyptian, for all I know. I don't speak ancient Egyptian. And the Zaphothneah could have just been his title, or one of his names, because if you look at Ramesses, that's the Greek version of his name. If you look at the Egyptian name, it's 10 syllables long. So they could have just been using part of Joseph's name in the Bible, part of his name on that plaque. We don't know for sure. I mean, if you have a time machine, please let me know. I will be more than happy to go with you to go find out for sure. I just request that we make a stop in around 30 AD on the way back, listened to a few sermons by a very famous preacher. I know you guys have heard of him. Talks about him in this book. Yeah, you have a time machine. I want to know. I will gladly go with you to investigate some of these things and sit and listen to Jesus with you. I would be happy to do that. Although we might get in trouble by Jesus, so it's a minor thing. I wouldn't mind him lecturing me about messing with the timeline, just to hear him speak. But anyway, we should get back to this. Yeah, to almost to this day, back in around the turn of the century, maybe as late as 1920, it was still this way. It was still that the government of Egypt owned the land and the people rented it. It may still be that way. I'm not sure. I haven't talked to the Egyptians about their land rights capability. I think they may own their land now. I hope. But for the longest time, it was just as is said in here. And Israel dwelt in the land of Mitzrayim, in the land of Goshen, and they had possessions there, and were fruitful and increased exceedingly. And Jacob lived in the land of Mitzrayim 17 years. So the length of Jacob's life was 147 years. And the time for Israel to die drew near, and he called his son Joseph and said to him, "Now, if I have found favor in your eyes, please put your hand under my thigh and show loving commitment and truth to me. Please do not bury me in Mitzrayim." That's another time that we've just seen, place your hand under my thigh. In ancient Greece, the whole concept of the actual name of testifying was, when you were testifying, you would have they would actually, if you're a man, they'd reach up between your legs and grab onto your testicles. It's a similar thing. It's put your hand up down here where I am most sensitive and vulnerable, and show me kindness, loving commitment, and promise me that you're going to do this. It's showing me that I can trust you to do this. Honestly, if we went back to the Greek style of testifying, I don't think any man would lie under oath, because if the person questioning you knew that you were lying, think of what pain they could cause you. It might actually be a good thing to go back to that. I know I personally would definitely be honest, although I listen to God's word, so I'm honest to a fault whenever absolutely possible. I do slip up. Thank you, Lord, for sending your Son to cover my transgressions, but this is just another way of testifying that you are going to do it. You put your hand underneath their thigh, and it's a sign that you can be trusted. But I shall lie with my fathers, and you shall take me up out of Mitzrayim, and bury me in their burial place. And he said, I do as you have said. He's just basically saying, yes, Father, wherever you want to be buried, that's fine with me. And he said, swear to me. And he swore to him. And Israel bowed himself on the head of his bed. He rested himself on the head of his bed. Genesis 48. And after these events, it came to be that it was said to Joseph, see, your father is sick. And he took with him his 2 sons, Manasseh and Ephraim. And Jacob was told, see, your son Joseph is coming to you. And Israel strengthened himself and sat up in bed, sat up on the bed. And Jacob said to Joseph, El Shaddai appeared to me at Luz in the land of Canaan, and blessed me, and said to me, See, I am making you fruitful and shall increase you and make of you an assembly of people, and give this land to your seed after you as an everlasting possession. And now your 2 sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, who were born to you in the land of Mitzrayim before I came to you in Mitzrayim, are mine, as Reuben and Simeon are mine. Basically, he's saying, I'm going to adopt your sons, and they are going to be directly in my line. And it explains why he wants to do that in a bit. Your offspring, whom you shall bring forth after them, are yours, and let them be called by the name of their brothers in their inheritance. Basically, if you have more kids, their inheritance will come through your first 2 sons. And when I came from Padam, Rachel died beside me in the land of Canaan on the way, when there was but a little distance to go to Ephrath, and I buried her there on the way to Ephrath, that is Bethlehem. Yes, the tomb of Rachel is just outside of the town of Bethlehem. If I'm ever in Israel, I'm definitely going to go there just to see the tomb. It's supposed to be a pretty nice place. There's other sites I want to see a little bit more than that, but it's definitely on the to-do list if I ever go. And Israel saw Joseph's sons and said, Who are these? And Joseph said to his father, They are my sons, whom Elohim has given me in this place. And he said, Please bring them to me, and let me bless them. And the eyes of Israel were dim with age, and he was unable to see. And he drew them near, and he kissed them and embraced them. And Israel said to Joseph, I had not thought to see your face, but see, Elohim has also shown me your seed. So Joseph brought them from between his knees, and he bowed down his face to the earth. And Joseph took them both, Ephraim with his right hand toward Israel's left hand, and Manasseh with his left hand towards Israel's right hand, and brought them near him. And Israel stretched out his right hand and laid it upon Ephraim's head, who was the younger, and his left hand on Manasseh's head, consciously directing his hands, for Manasseh was the firstborn. And he blessed Joseph and said, The Elohim before whom my fathers Abraham and Isaac walked, the Elohim who has fed me all my life long to this day, the messenger who has redeemed me from all evil, bless the youths, and let my name be called upon them, and the name of my fathers Abraham and Isaac, and let them increase to a multitude in the midst of the earth. And when Joseph saw that his father laid his right hand upon the head of Ephraim, it was evil in his eyes, and he took his father's hand and to remove it from the head of Ephraim to the head of Manasseh. Joseph said to his father, Not so, my father, for this one is the firstborn. Put your right hand on his head. But his father refused and said, I know, my son, I know. he also becomes a people, and he also is great. And yet his younger brother is greater than he, and his seed is to become the completeness of the nations. And he blessed them on that day, saying, in you Israel shall bless, saying, Elohim make you as Elohim, or make you as Ephraim and as Manasseh. Thus he put Ephraim before Manasseh. And Israel said to Joseph, see, I am dying, but Elohim shall be with you, and bring you back to the land of your fathers. And I give you, well, and I have given to you one portion above your brothers, which I took from the hand of the Amorite with the sword and with my bow. Basically, he's just explaining why he was adopting Joseph's sons. That way he could give Joseph a double inheritance. By adopting his sons, Joseph technically was disinherited because one of his sons got his portion. But that's okay, because there's more. His family got a double portion. So Joseph was okay with it. And Jacob called, this is Genesis 49 now. And Jacob called his sons and said, gather together so that I declare to you what is to befall you in the last days. Gather together and hear, you sons of Jacob, and listen to Israel your father. Reuben, you are my firstborn. There we go. You are my firstborn, my power and the being of my strength, the excellency of exaltation and the excellency of power. Boiling like water, you do not excel, because you went up to your father's bed. Then you defiled it. He went up to my couch. And Simeon and Levi are brothers. Their weapons are implements of violence. He's recalling when they slaughtered the village that they were staying at, outside of, because they raped their sister. Yeah, I probably would have done the same thing. If I had a sister, I would have done quite a bit to protect her. But this is their punishment. And later you find out that they become the priestly class. So they're not without. They get in every one of the towns, every one of the different tribes of Israel, they actually get a city in each one. So they're not completely without land. They just don't get huge swaths of it. Simeon and Levi, brothers, are weapons. Their weapons are implements of violence. Let my being not enter their council. Let my esteem not be united to their assembly, because they killed a man in their displeasure, and they lamed an ox in pleasure. That's just basically saying they wiped out the whole village, killed everybody, and slaughtered the animals. They were vicious when they did that. Cursed be their displeasure, for it is fierce, and their wrath, for it is cruel. I divide them in Jacob, and scatter them in Israel. You, Judah, your brothers praise you. Your hand is on the neck of your enemies. Your father's children bow down before you. tribe of Judah is where all the kings came from until the Maccabees. And our prince came from Judah. Jesus was Judean. He was of the tribe of Judah. So it's actually prophesying quite a bit here. Judah is the lion cub from the prey you have gone up, my son. He bowed down, he crouched like a lion, and like a lion, who does rouse him? I think that's some beautiful imagery. One of the depictions of Jesus, one of the descriptions of him anyway, is the Lion of Judah. Basically, this is, if you look back to this, Jesus is the Lion of the lions. They're the fiercest. They're Jesus. Yeah, you get the image of him being this gentle hippie. He wasn't. He had strength and power. I mean, if you really want to look into it, think about how he recruited the fishermen. He said, "Come, I'll make you fishers of men." And he had power and authority that they would listen. These were not weaklings. The fishermen at that time, 2,000 years ago, the nets weighed maybe 30 pounds when dry, 50 to 60 pounds wet, and two of them would haul a whole load of fish into the boat. When Jesus went with them and they fished together, one time it almost sank the boat, and it took 4 men to pull it in to the boat. That's thousands of pounds that they're pulling. Jesus is not picking weaklings in that story. This is saying he's a lion. When a lion says, "Leave me alone," you listen. Just like when Jesus says, "Come with me," we listen. The scepter shall not turn aside from Judah, nor an inscriber from between his feet, until Shiloh comes, and to him is the obedience of the people. Binding his donkey to the vine, and his donkey's colt to the choice vine. He washed his garments in wine, and his robes in the blood of grapes. That's a little bit of foretelling to Jesus. I mean, he rode into Jerusalem on a donkey, on a colt of a donkey, and Jesus would be the choicest of vines. He's the best of us. And the blood of grapes, well, let's be honest, we're washed in the blood of the Lamb. His eyes are darker than wine, and his teeth whiter than milk. Basically, it's saying he's healthy. It's talking about Jesus. He's going to be the best of us. He's going to be the healthiest of us. Nothing will be wrong with him. Now we go on to others. Zebulun dwells at the seashore. He is for a haven for ships, and his border is unto Sidon. Ishkar is a strong donkey lying down between two burdens. And he saw that a resting place was good, and that the land was pleasant, and he inclined his shoulders to bear a burden, and became subject to slave labor. Dan rightly rules his people as one of the tribes of Israel. Dan is a serpent by the way of the adder, and the path, the way by the way, and adder by the path, that bites the horse's heel so that the rider falls backwards. I have waited for your deliverance, O Yahweh. Glad a riding band rides him, but he raids its heel. Bread from Asher is rich, and he gives uh, oh he gives delicacies of a sovereign. Naphtali is a deer let loose. He gives word of elegance. Some translations has fruitfulness. Joseph is an offshoot of a fruit-bearing tree. An offshoot of a fruit-bearing tree by a fountain. His branches run over a wall. And an archer have briefly grieved him, shoot at him, and hated him. But his bow remained in strength, and the arms of his hands were made strong by the hands of the mighty one of Jacob. From there is the shepherd of the stone of Israel. From the El of your father who helps you, and by the Almighty who blesses you with blessings of heaven, of the heavens from above, blessings of the deep that lies beneath, blessings of the breast of and of the womb. Blessings of your father have excelled the blessings of my ancestors up to the limit of the everlasting hills. They are on the head of Joseph, and on the crown of the head of him who was separated from his brothers. Benjamin is a wolf that tears in the morning. He eats prey, and at night he divides the spoil. All these are the 12 tribes of Israel, and this is what their father spoke to them, and he blessed them. He blessed each one according to his own blessing. And he commanded them and said to them, I am to be gathered to my people. Bury me with my father in the cave that is in the field of Ephron the Hittite, in the cave that is in the field of Machpelah, which is before Mamre in the land of Canaan, which Abraham bought with the field of Ephraim the Hittite as a possession for a burial site. And they buried Abraham and Sarah his wife. There they buried Isaac and Rachel his wife, and Rebekah his wife. And there I have buried Leah. The field purchased, and the cave which is in it, from the sons of Heth. And when Jacob ended commanding his sons, he drew his feet up onto the bed and breathed his last, and was gathered to his people. All right, Genesis 50. And Joseph fell on his father's face and wept over him and kissed him. And Joseph commanded his servants, the physicians, to embalm his father. So the physicians embalmed Israel. And 40 days were completed for him. or so are completed the days of the embalming, and the Mitzrayites wept for him 70 days. It was actually traditional in Egypt for someone who was wealthy and powerful to actually be embalmed, to be mummified. And obviously Joseph had the power and money to do this. And that made it easier for them to transport him back. But it took about 40 days for the process, because they buried them in natron salt, this mineral salt that was really, it sucked everything out of the body, all the moisture out. And then they, before that, they removed the organs, put them in the jars. They packed the inside of the body with the natron salt, covered it over, and 40 days later they unpacked it, packed some packing inside, and wrapped it in the linens. Now, I don't think the linens would have had all the Egyptian magic symbols, because Jacob wouldn't have had to go to the Egyptian afterlife. He was being taken. He was already up in heaven with God. So, and the fact that the Egyptians wept for 70 days showed how much they cared for Joseph. They saw Joseph's pain, and they loved him. I mean, they loved Joseph so much that Pharaoh gave him that land for his family. And when the days of weeping for him were past, Joseph spoke to the household of Pharaoh, saying, "If now I have found favor in your eyes, please speak in the hearing of Pharaoh, saying, my father made me swear, saying, see, I am dying. Bury me in the burial site which I dug for myself in the land of Canaan. And now, please let me go up and bury my father and return." And Pharaoh said, Go up and bury your father, as he made you swear. And Joseph went up to bury his father, and with him went all of the servants of Pharaoh, the elders of his house, and all the elders of the land of Mitzrayim, and all the house of Joseph, and his brothers, and his father's house. Only their little ones, and their flocks, and their herds they left in the land of Goshen. And there went up with him both chariots and horsemen, and it was a very great company. And they came to the threshing floor of Atad, which was beyond the Jordan, and they lamented there. They lamented there with a great and heavy lamentation, and he performed 7 days of mourning for his father. And when the inhabitants of the land of Canaanites, inhabitants of the land, the Canaanites, saw the mourning at the threshing floor of Atad, they said, They said that this is a grievous mourning for the Mitzrayites. That is why it is named, why its name is called Abel Mitzrayim, which is beyond Jordan. And his sons did to him as he had commanded them. For his sons brought him to the land of Canaan, and buried him in the cave of the field of Machpelah before Mamre, which Abraham bought with the field from Ephron the Hittite as property for a burial site. And after he had buried his father, Joseph returned to Mitzrayim, he and his brothers, and all who went up with him to bury his father. And when Joseph's brothers saw their father was dead, they said, What if Joseph hates us, and he pays us back all the evil which we did to him? And they sent word to Joseph, saying, Before your father died, he commanded, saying, This is what you are to say to Joseph. I beg you, please forgive the transgressions of your brothers and their sin, for they did evil to you. And now, please forgive the transgressions of your servants, or of the servants of Elohim your father, of the Elohim of your father. And Joseph wept when they spoke to him. And his brothers also went and fell down before his face, and they said, See, we are your servants. And Joseph said to them, Do not fear, for am I in the place of Elohim? And you intended evil against me, but Elohim intended it for good, in order to do it as it is this day, to keep a great many people alive. And now, do not fear. I provide for you and your little ones. So he comforted them and spoke kindly to them. And Joseph dwelt in Mitzrayim, he and his father's household, and Joseph lived 110 years. And Joseph saw Ephraim's children to the third generation. The children of Mechar, the son of Manasseh, were also born on Joseph's knees. And Joseph said to his brothers, I am dying, but Elohim shall certainly visit you and bring you to the land, bring you out of this land to the land of which he swore to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob. And Joseph made the children of Israel swear, saying, Elohim shall certainly visit you, and you shall bring up my bones from here. And Joseph died, being 110 years old. And they embalmed him, and he was placed in a coffin in Mitzrayim. And this ends the book of Genesis. We'll stop here for now. Next time we will begin the book of Exodus. And in the book of Exodus we will see how God dealt with the gods of Egypt, those demons pretending to be gods. Yes, I love the book of Exodus. I cannot wait to share it with you. But for now, we shall depart from here. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And as always, good luck and God bless.